don't pretend like it's 1988 and you're still going double platinum.
Does it get much better than that when Michael Kelly Smith says that your videos are badass?
And they put out an album called American Hardcore, and it is American horse shit.
Like, I'm the glam guy. I'm a hair metal guy.
I did the same thing with Generation Swine, except Generation Swine actually did suck.
One of my best buddies, he thinks Axl Rose is God.
Michael Kelly Smith, give me one of those fucking Brittany Fox coffee mugs.
The song Better, that might be one of my favorite Guns N' Roses songs of all time.
You said you could cut that album down to 10 songs. I could cut it down to 3.
Right in the middle is where the masterpiece is, and that is 1994.
She puked in the truck, and then she shit in the house.
It's like the 90s never happened. They still think that they're on top of the hill.
It is going to be the greatest fucking album in the history of fucking albums.
There might be gold at the end of the album, but I ain't gonna get there.
All right, only $7, and you put it in, and you're like, I got screwed by $6.
If you're gonna make me choose either Richie or CC, I'm gonna take Richie.
You are right. My followers are fucking brilliant, and no offense, but yours are dumb as shit.
I came across this album, this holy grail of an album.
Sarcasm is my love language. Look, I came here to do 2 things: chew bubblegum and talk hair metal. And it looks like I'm almost out of bubblegum. Welcome to the Hair Metal Guru. My name is Anthony. They call me the Guru. And man, you're going to see a new face here today. New face, new episode. Today, my buddy Trevor from the Crash Course Metal Show is here, and we are going to be talking about hair metal bands or metal bands that change their sound, and ultimately we decide whether it worked or not. Crash, my man, welcome to the Hair Metal Guru Show.
What is up, Anthony? Thank you so much for having me on. This is great. Coming back because we just talked last week on my channel, Crash Course Metal Show. It's just great to come back over here to your lair, your neck of the woods, and talk to all your glam metal fans as well. Very cool because I creep in the comments. You have a smart comment, subscriber base and stuff like that. So I creep in, but I want to know today though, like what's their palette as far as hair metal variety, like when hair metal changed. So like, yeah, I'm quite interested to see what your fan or like your followers will have to say here for this.
Yeah, and you are right. My followers are fucking brilliant. And no offense, but yours are dumb as shit. No, I'm kidding. I'm just
some of the comments I get. Yeah,
that is just a joke. I'm sure a lot of my followers are fans of your page and the same. So people know.
Oh yeah,
sarcasm is my love language. So hey, speaking of followers, please go check out Trevor's page, Crash Course Metal Show. It's awesome. Love watching. And man, you get some great interviews. You've interviewed Joel Ellis from Cats and Boots, Drew, the lead singer of Wildside. Man, some awesome shit on your channel. So go check out his page if you haven't. And people that are following me now, hey, follow me on X as well. Go check out at Hair Metal Guru. You are also on X if you want to throw out what your handle is.
I think it's just Trevor Crash Knight. I think that's what it is. So yeah,
doesn't know. But
it's the same as Facebook too. It's all the same everywhere you go. So.
All right. So before we get into this, it's kind of a newly framed item. Is the vintage 1990 Billboard magazine ad for the Detonator album. I hate the lighting, but I think a really underrated album in the Rat discography. The only album that didn't go platinum during their heydays, so they broke up after this, put out a greatest hits, and then Stephen Pearcy went on to do the ultimately awesome Arcade album. Holy shit! But there is some vintage Rat for you. So
I love that poster. That is one of my favorite Rat albums. I don't care what anybody says. But that poster is just badass. You show off a lot of good stuff there too that I get a little jealous of. So.
No, thank you. And yeah, so I actually, it's kind of a side business. Like all this shit that's in my house, I kind of advertise stuff on Facebook, and people come check out my garage. It's just full of this stuff. So, hey, if you're wondering why my shirt looks like it doesn't fit very good, because this shirt fits like shit. but it is a vintage original 1993 Poison Native Tongue tour shirt that I
Oh
haven't
shit.
worn in forever. It's been hanging in the closet. So anyway, you don't see shit like this very often. So, and there is a reason that I wore a Poison Native Tongue shirt today. So without further ado, we are talking about hair metal bands or metal, it's all fits in the same kind of category. Metal bands that changed their sound, whether it was they went grunge or some other change. Maybe it was dramatically heavier, but whatever it is, we're going to talk about that, decide whether that change worked. And without further ado, Crash, my man, what is your number 5?
All right, my number 5. I guess technically they're not technically in any order for me. I just because I had like 20 of these that I could have thrown into this list, and it's like, man, okay. So, but anyway, my first one, I'm going to start with a negative. Get the negative stuff out of the way, Anthony. I like to be all positive, that's why we love hair metal, just to be fun, positive, but with a little bit of me in there too.
Right.
So, my first one here, as far as negative, bad change, and that is going to be Wildside's self-titled. Now, this one here, like you mentioned, Drew did come on my show, Drew Hanna, the lead singer. We talked a little bit about this album here, and he does he still kind of likes it. He didn't want to say anything like bad about it, which I get because it is his baby, it's his work. But man, when I first because I first found Wildside, on YouTube when I was in high school, like 14 years old or something. I came across this album, this holy grail
Oh,
of an album, and the music video and such.
yeah.
And and I was like, okay, they have a second one? Oh my gosh, what this is so cool. I'm gonna get it. It's only like $7. I'm gonna get it. I put it on. No way. It's total grunge style, alternative style. Sure, it still sounds like Drew, the vocalist. But man, you got 10 tracks on here. I can only literally probably remember 2 of them and how they even go. None of them are on the iPod. None of I like I hate I love Drew, but I I just gotta say, man, this is when you're coming from like literally greatness of
Yeah.
this Under the Influence album, and then you come in here a couple years later. Now I get it, the scene changed. They could have released this again, and it wouldn't have done nothing. It would have
Or-
sold probably as well as this, and that's the sad nature of it at the time. But man, like I would say, if you do want to check any of these songs out, I would say probably Full Circle or Company of Users. But even then, like Company of Users, I remember it for some reason, but it's so low energy, so lethargic, and not the vibe that I'm hardly ever in. And if I am in like that kind of like low vibe, I got way better stuff that to listen to than this, and
yeah.
man, that's just what I kind of want to say. When you come from something like this, go to something like totally different, like, and which is kind of strange too, because Drew said that he, if anyone's familiar with the Graveyard Train from 1993
Yep.
with their self-titled album, oh my god, that's another amazing album. They ended up picking up the guitar player for the second Wildside album, and
Because Brent Woods was gone.
correct, yep. And now you would think, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's go here. But man, there's no sign of any kind of anything that you love about
Yeah.
either Graveyard Train or Wildside on this self-titled Wildside album. And it hurts me to say. I haven't talked about this album for probably since I talked to Drew. And man, it's probably gonna stay that way again now. So but yeah, Anthony, you remember when that album came out?
Yeah. I was gonna say you bought it for $7 and you're like, all right, only $7, and you put it in and you're like, I got screwed by $6. Uh
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's it's a shit show. I felt bad when I got it because, and here it's kind of ironic because on Under the Influence, one of my favorite songs is a song called Monkey See, Monkey Do.
Yeah.
And the message in that song is don't just go out copying what everybody else does, be yourself. And that's what we are doing. And then Wildside puts out their next album in 95. And what did they do? They copied what everybody else was doing. Now, I get it. A lot of bands where, fuck, how do we survive in 1995? Warrant kind of
Right.
did the same thing. So I have that CD. I haven't listened to it, and I couldn't name you one song on that album. Um, and I now that you bring it up, I'm like, I kind of want to check it out one more time just to
Just the
make
key.
sure. But I was just so disappointed because Under the Influence would probably be in my top 10 hair metal albums of all time.
Me too.
With
Yep.
all the heavy hitters. And whenever I talk about bands that could have and should have but didn't, bands that should have been bigger,
Hmm.
I always got that album. I always got McQueen Street,
Oh yeah.
Sleazy's, and DAD. And so to go from Under the Influence, like you said, one of your favorite albums, to that shit heap of the self-titled, huge disappointment. So it's a failure.
It is. It is. Yeah. I think that's pretty much all that we can say about it. And
Yeah.
like you said, I do try it, like I said, every couple years or more.
Yeah.
And man, it just like give me some more Under the Influence. I'm happy with those 12 tracks or 13 tracks, so
Yeah. Yeah. All right. My number five. Talk about bands that went into left field, and this is a band that I loved at the beginning of their career, and now they're still putting out albums, and they are putting out solid melodic rock in the 2020s. In fact, their latest album, what's it? Black
mhm.
Diamonds,
Yep.
uh, from LA Guns is freaking awesome, but in 1996, Tracy Guns put on bib overalls, and they got a new singer called Chris Van Dahl, and they put out an album called American Hardcore, and it is American horse shit. Okay. And it they took the cute, there's the album right there. And I have it, I'm a completist, so I'll buy shit just because it's from a band that I love. So I have that CD somewhere in the collection. But it's they took the cue from Pantera and the hard thrash bands, and they were like, fuck it, let's give this a whirl.
Mhm.
1995's Vicious Cycle, uh, which is a solid album, went a little bit heavier than their previous albums, but didn't do well. And I don't know, maybe they were thinking, hey, we'll just do something complete. So you should put up the cover again, real quick. I mean, look at that cover. This ghetto gangster dude, holding up a gun, so fucking cheesy. And it's not LA Guns, it's the LA Guns.
Right.
So I legitimately I listened to this album a couple weeks ago, just had it on YouTube, but I'm like, because I was gonna do something about LA Guns. But anyway, it is horrible. I couldn't name you a song. I didn't bother to go listen to it today because I'm like you, every maybe once a year, every 2 years, albums like that I throw in just to maybe go, hey, maybe there's a song on there that I can get into.
Right.
It's shit. So luckily, and I saw that tour. I saw that
Did
tour
you?
with
Okay.
Warrant and Bang Tango. Warrant was the headliner. And when I said bib overalls, Tracy on stage had bib overalls on. They played most of that album. They only they didn't, I think they did, maybe they played Ballad of Jane, but they only played like Rip and Tear. And
Hmm.
Chris Van Dahl, I mean, he's done some stuff that he's done some other projects that I've been like, okay. But he barely sang it. He just handed the microphone out in the crowd and let the crowd sing it. It was horrible. So luckily they came back to their senses. But in 1996, what the fuck were you thinking, Tracy?
Yeah, I'm with you. I bought that album probably like a couple years ago, $5, and still $5 too much even for that album. Like at least with Wildside, I can still hear the talent and what have you in that album. But this one here, oh my God, I don't even know. Like each time I try to play it, I only get to like track 3 or 4,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's done. It's done.
Yeah.
There might be gold at the end of the album, but hell, I ain't gonna get there because it's literally hell in my ears. And and that's kind of weird to say because like you said, the newer albums of LA Guns are pretty good.
Yeah.
Checkered Past was okay as well. The Missing Piece, I did enjoy that. The Devil
Yep.
You Know and such.
Yep.
Like, but something in that like late 90s to because even like Phil Lewis and like Steve Riley did good stuff during this time, but it
Yep.
just seems like wherever Tracy was, and somewhat still when he's not in LA Guns,
Yeah.
something is missing for me anyway. But
I think he's kind of a weird dude, and obviously he's talented, but he did Brides of Destruction.
right, yeah,
He brought in Delana, the chick, to sing, which
hmm
fine. I mean, I liked Lizzie Hale doing Skid Row stuff, but
hmm
he's gone through bandmates like crazy. He's done so many different things musically, and hey, it's your career. Do what you
oh
want to
yeah,
do.
yep,
But don't expect your fans to follow everywhere you go, because if you put out something that's shit, I'm gonna say it's shit.
right, yeah, and you're not gonna get my money that
Right.
other bands that are doing good stuff that are well deserving of that money, and that's kind
Yep.
of like I think where at least with like some of the old school like from the 80s, a lot of the bands and just even people in general, they kind of miss that part. Like it's like the 90s never happened. They still think that they're on top of the hill. Even
Right.
Motley Crue and
Yeah.
top bands like that from our subgenre here, they can't really demand anything anymore per se,
Oh.
and it's just a sad state that our subgenre is in, and just that the bands are in. So, I
Well,
mean, I don't know.
and
I
hopefully it's okay for me to you were just at a concert this weekend, and you were
yeah,
talking about how, and it's hair bands
yep,
charging $60 for a
a
shirt,
t-shirt,
and
yeah,
you're like, hey, you're not Adele or Taylor Swift, so if you want us to keep some, like,
yeah,
and I get it, you have to make money, you have to live, but
right,
it's in 224. Your glory days were 40 years ago. So if you want, old, I'm older, you're kind of a young dude. So if you want us to keep coming and shelling out the money, but don't pretend like it's 1988 and you're still going double platinum. But
yes, yeah, yeah,
it's kind
and
of off topic, but anyway.
it is, and I will release that concert review or what have you here very soon. So yeah, you guys can check that out in like about a week or so. But yeah, I'm 100% with you in that because like I literally told people at the concert, I would rather buy two brand new albums from underground bands right now and just stayed at home and enjoyed them and supported the underground bands instead of these bands here tonight.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at that. And
Yep.
because that's basically the meat of it as
Yep.
a scene. So, all right. But yeah, no, LA Guns, not very good.
All right. Great. So obviously we're both saying it didn't work. Let's go on to your number 4. What do you got?
Okay, so like I said, I pushed all the negative out of my list as of now. So from here on out, I'm gonna be kind
I
of
kept
boring and say,
I kept the negative in my list.
okay, yeah, which is fine because there are plenty of that. But I think I like to always bring out the best in
Yeah.
the subgenre that kind of gets shit on for a lot of the music industry as a whole. Just hair metal gets shit on. So all right, so my next choice here that I think actually worked, but a lot of people hate is Wasp 1997's KFD or Kill Fuck Die.
Yep.
Now I get it, it's not hair metal. It's not anything that Wasp did up until that point. Because even the album before this, Still Not Black Enough, it was pretty heavy. It got back to more of like the Wasp roots, but 1994, a little bit of goth feel to it. But KFD, Chris Holmes comes back. You got Chris Holmes is the man. He got a great guitar tone and everything. Everyone's like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, Blackie and Chris is back on the map here. But for like now, granted, I was alive when this was released, but I wasn't in the music. I was only like 5 years old. So now coming from someone that, you know, grew up with Wasp and everything, sure, this probably flipped your lid and you were like, this is shit, but I was kind of like I braced myself for this, so like I kind of had a little bit of an easier padding, I guess, if you will, while I listened to this. But man, I gotta say, I enjoy it. Like, okay, like we just explained with the Wildside. Okay, when you're in like a down, low vibe feeling, I much rather go listen to this album because that is what I feel. Like if you're depressed or something, like this is like how you feel. And it just helps you get that out. Where Wildside, it's like, what are we even doing here? Like I don't even know. But like Blackie does great here on this album. Chris sounds good. You know, and there's a couple songs on here, like The Horror and Kill Your Pretty Face. If anyone's a fan of like The Doors or the song The End by The Doors, holy hell, that sounds like just a heavy metal bigger brother version of it. You know, you could have easily put those two songs together and made an epic song like The End, and it would just, like I said, it'd be a heavy metal version of it. But there's some good fast up tempo stuff there, and then obviously you have here what actually more people talk of this era instead of this album. You have the live show of
Yeah.
him decapitating live pigs, basically from the lore of of 1997 anyway. And then he eventually changed like from screwing a nun on stage to changing out the nun to putting Marilyn Manson in the nun's place and such like that, which is actually kind of funny. But but anyway, but while Blackie kind of changes pivots again here, even after this album, and does Eldorado, which is like real glammy, real like Blind in Texas feel to it, which I absolutely love that album. I know a lot of people shit on that too. But I mean, KFD, you got to be in the right headspace for this album. Same with like Iron Man and X Factor. Like, don't listen to this when you're going out on a Friday or Saturday night and you're about to party with a bunch of friends. Like, no, yeah, this is gonna absolutely suck in that environment. But man, if you're at home, like had a bad day at work or just not feeling good or whatever, just pop this on in the background and it just matches that depressive vibe. You gotta be in the right headspace for it.
Is now it's been forever. I don't even know if I've listened to that. And I'm with you. I love Eldorado. But I
Hmm.
think part of the reason that I never checked that album out is, and I could be wrong, isn't it kind of industrial
Yes.
in
Okay.
a way?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you for bringing that up because that is a point I did want to talk about. But it is industrial. Don't believe Blackie when he says, "Oh no, we weren't trying to do industrial shit
Yeah.
at the time or whatever." All right, come on, man. Like you don't have to lie about it like bold facedly because it is very industrial. It's very goth. It's kind of it's even like along the lines of Danzig 5, if anyone's familiar with that album from 1990. What 6. But yeah, it's very, and that's what a lot of people are doing because grunge kind of phased out at this point now. Like it's not really the hot ticket, so industrial is kind of what everyone is looking into right now, and that's where Wasp ends up going. Now, is it 100% industrial? No, I guess that you could call it more of an atmosphere album
Yeah.
than say a straight industrial album,
Right.
but nonetheless, the influence is totally there. That and just to say that it had no influence of industrial, I someone's lying to you. I,
Yeah.
I don't know, but nonetheless, though, I do enjoy it. I visit it for what is it the most visited album that I listen to of Wasp? Of course not, but it's one that I think people need to be in the right headspace to listen to and to appreciate. So I think it's not a total wash. So,
Okay. I need to check that out. And I'm not like completely anti-industrial. There are some industrial songs that have some kick-ass beats and
oh yeah,
guitars and that I'm into. So I should have checked it out in the first place. But Wasp has always been, they never really fit into the hair metal. They did
right.
some similar shit in the 80s, but they were always on the outskirts. There's probably a lot of people who are, would say they're not they're more of a heavy metal band, hard rock band, but
Mhm.
whatever, close enough for this channel. And
Right.
so I'm a huge Wasp fan, and but yeah, grunge was over. What was the next thing? Well, maybe it was the Pantera sounds, or maybe,
Yeah.
you're starting to get into Marilyn Manson category and
Right. And
industrial work.
you even had death metal coming out of Florida like a couple years prior, but death metal started, that was during the heyday there too.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. So I don't have an opinion on it, on whether it worked or not, but I'm gonna check it out and then I'm at least gonna let you know. So
Okay, yeah. For me, it worked anyway. For me, it works.
perfect, perfect. Okay, we are on to my number 4 and my Poison Native Tongue shirt. Shirt isn't like the coolest shirt. Like the design could have been, the fuck is that? So anyway,
Yeah,
Native Tongue came out and I was pumped. I was really pumped. And I love the first 3 Poison albums. I'm a huge Poison fan. And CC DeVille was, but I'm like, hey, they're gonna get this new talented guitar player. It's gonna be great. And I didn't mind the first single, Stand. I don't know that I loved it, but I was like, well, it's different. It's kind of ballad-esque. It's got a
Mhm.
really positive message. We'll see what comes out. So, I get it the day it comes out. And it was just, there it is right there. Yeah, talk about a different cover for a Poison album. It was
Right.
and I'm not a guitar player, but everybody says that Richie Kotzen or Kotzen is a great guitar player. And you can tell just listening to it that he's doing a lot of crazy shit that is probably impressive to
Hmm.
people who play guitars. But I've never been big into bands that are like blah, 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 like that's a reason I'm not really big on Mr. Big, is they're
Yep.
so talented. Whereas I like simple, crunch, 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 simple backbeat. That's my jam.
The
So
AC/DCs of the world.
right,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So anyway, there was and it was so bluesy. Now that like to me there was one song that sounded like it maybe could have fit on an earlier album, and I mean one rock song. It's called Strike Up the Band. That has kind of that simplicity in the guitar riff. The lyrics are a little bit more old school. And I'll tell you what, in the 90s I was fine with people growing lyrically. We're not
Hmm.
all 17 years old. I didn't need songs about sex and partying. I was fine with more grown-up topics.
Right.
But musically, I was, Warrant with Dog Eat Dog. It was a tougher sound. It was more mature lyrically. Love that album. But here they matured lyrically, but then they tried to mature musically, and ooh, Confetti went in a direction that I just was not a fan of. So I did the ballads were very good. Until You
Hmm.
Suffer Some Fire Ice is a very good song. My favorite
Yep.
ballad on the album is Theater of the Soul. It almost sounds like part 2 of Every Rose Has Its Thorn. It's a
A
great
little bit. Yeah.
ballad. But outside of that, there was not much that grabbed me. Native Tongue's a failure in my book.
Okay. All right. That's interesting because I would say it works. I we From everything that you
Great.
said, yeah. From everything that you said, I'm 100% opposite of you. Like, I'm not gonna tell you what my favorite Poison album is now. Uh, but I like it, man. But generally speaking, a lot of people don't. And now, I am familiar with Richie's solo output, and I really enjoy that throughout the '90s as well.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Stan. I like the Black Church Choir that is in. That's in a lot of early '90s sleaze, hair metal, and stuff like that throughout those 3 years.
Yep.
Like Chain and Angel, South Gang, and shit
Yeah.
like that. Which I enjoy. Which I know you're not a big fan of horns in metal,
No.
which I'm a very big fan of horns in metal. I think they rightfully belong in there. But nonetheless, though, I think this now is the album too long? Of course, I think the album is way too long. It's 15 tracks. I don't know what the hell you're thinking. Although it is 1993 and the CDs are new, so
Yeah.
let's put everything we can put on them.
Right.
But if you shave I can easily shave this down to probably like 11 tracks and have a really good album, like one that is still going to be my favorite Poison album. But no, I like it. Now I love CC. But I think Richie does bring something different
Yeah.
to the table, obviously, and I just like that bluesier style.
Yep.
CC sometimes goes too crazy, which I do love crazy solos and like just craziness of guitars everywhere. But something about CC though, if you're gonna make me choose either Richie or CC, I'm gonna take Richie. So
Sure.
yeah,
And that's a personal, I mean, some
of
people love
course.
the blue, like I'll give you, I almost put Great White on here, because at the beginning, their first couple albums really
Ooh,
straight ahead hard rock.
yeah.
And I love that. Now, I like the later Great White albums too.
Hmm.
Once Bitten, Twice Shy. I like
Hooked.
that stuff. But I would prefer that earlier straight ahead hard rock sound from Great White. So,
Mhm.
that's me being a guy who's not a huge blues guy. So it's
Right.
so I know that, I mean, I know that album didn't do that well. A
Hmm.
lot of the reason is it came out in 93. It did go gold, but
Hmm.
I know a lot of people that really like that album. But it's just too over the top, noodling and bluesy for me. You said you could cut that album down to 10 songs. I could cut it down to 3 and be good. So
Yeah,
I
then we'll
and
have
I
an
love,
EP.
I want us to disagree. We don't have to, hey, shit.
Yeah,
Awesome. So I'm
good
glad
deal. Yeah,
that,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
glad that
That's what
we
makes
did.
the world go around.
Yeah.
Disagreements.
Oh yeah. All right. Great. We are on to your
All
number
right.
3. What do you got?
Alrighty. So I think my next one I'm going to go with. I'm going to really divide some fans here,
Is that a Britney
and
Fox
and I,
coffee
and I
mug?
think you as well.
Is that
We're
a
gonna have
Britney?
a we're
Hey,
gonna have a pretty good discussion, I think here,
hey,
and
hey.
that is good. Oh yeah,
Is that a Britney Fox coffee mug?
yes, it is.
Oh, that is kick ass. Where do you get that?
From actually Michael Kelly Smith. He
Oh,
he has like this whole store. He has like this whole store and stuff. Like it's badass. Like, actually, that reminds me. Thank you for reminding me. I was hanging out with Michael Kelly this weekend at a record expo, and he loved our video that we did
cool.
talking about Razamanaz and stuff. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, does it get much better than that when Michael Kelly Smith says that your videos are badass? Like,
Yes.
yeah, that's
Yes.
awesome, dude. Like, good stuff. I wanted to tell you that before, but
Thank you. That's cool.
uh,
That's cool.
yeah. So, guys, I mean, to the all the followers and stuff out there, we're getting stamp of approvals. Like, well, come
Yeah.
on, it don't get much better than that. So,
Yeah.
all right. So now we're gonna start dividing people here. Really,
Okay.
really, really. So, I got here. Was it 2008's Chinese Democracy?
Yep.
And now, don't get me wrong. I remember when this came out. I was, I guess, technically 14 or 15, and oh yeah, like I've been in the hair metal, like I said, I was in the womb listening to this shit. So I was like, okay, yeah, Guns N' Roses, new Guns N' Roses, it's taking forever. Like, when's actually going to be releasing this shit? And when it came out, I think I did hear one song. I'm not sure what song it was, but I was like, yeah, like everyone else, like, this is not very good or whatever. But after a couple years, I started revisiting it, and I'm like, this is actually pretty good. Like, I like, okay, I just gotta say, the song "Better," that might be one of my favorite Guns N' Roses songs of all time. Honestly, like that chorus is so catchy. Verse is catchy as hell. Okay, yes, Slash isn't on here. You're not getting Appetite for Destruction. You're not
Right.
getting even Use Your Illusions. Of course not. Like, I'm not saying, and I'm not comparing it to that either.
Yep.
But I do enjoy it a lot. Like when we talked about doing this topic, I started listening to like all these albums. I'm like, I listen to this actually the most out of all these albums when revisiting this stuff. It's so good. Now, it's way too long. It's 14 tracks. Please, yes, no. Let's cut it down to 11 or 10, and you have a much stronger album, more digestible album, even. But I think one of the key factors here why I kind of really like it is I'm a fan of Buckethead, the guitar player. A lot of his solo work and stuff. I'm a big fan of him, and you do hear him on this album. His fingerprints are on a lot of these songs.
Yep.
And now that's another thing though too. There's a revolving door with all the bandmates in here. Axel, and it took Axel like what 15 years to actually do this. Like, and you can kind of hear that a little bit. But now, would this album have done a little bit better if it came out in 2001, maybe instead
Right.
of 2008? Because at that time, like the hair metal, traditional metal, thrash metal was all having like a little resurgence. even
Yes.
still like this day, but that's when it started, like 2006, 2007. And I think it was just the wrong album sound for the wrong time. If it was just released like 5, 10 years earlier, would have been probably a lot better, honestly. But it actually did. Last I seen, it did go what? It did reach like the top 200 Billboard charts. I
It
don't know
went
if it's certified or
platinum.
not. Yeah.
It
Okay.
it
So
went well, and part of the reason it went platinum is, well, it had a special release to Best Buy. I don't know. I'm not saying that Best Buy was the only place, but Best Buy bought like a shit ton of that
yeah,
album. And
yeah.
it bombed. I mean, so there was a point 2 years after it came out, they put it on sale for $2,
I remember that.
and that helped. That's what pushed it to platinum.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember that because I remember a music store called FYE, if
Yeah.
anyone remembers that. Or
Yep.
I guess they used to be The Wall or something. But they that's where I actually got the CD. I have the CD version too. But I know you wanted to see this real big. So
Yep.
but the CD version was like $1.50 by the time I got to it. And like I'm like, hell yeah, I'll pick it up for $1.50. What the hell?
Yeah.
But and then I just started to like it more and more. But I'm really a big fan of IRS. You know, this I love. Like even the ballads on here are decent. Like Street of Dreams, I dig. The Axel is still Axel here. Yes, you're not getting Slash, you're getting Buckethead, and Bucket. That those are two different style of guitar playing.
Yep.
Which I do really enjoy Buckethead. Like he shreds on this album. There's really good guitar solos throughout the album. Even in Better, there's two separate solos, like in two different spots of in the song,
Yep.
which I'm like, this is crazy good. Like, I can't believe. I think it does start. It's starting to get a little more respect, like in the last few years, from what I gathered, anyway. But yeah, I mean, I get why people don't like it, but it's for me though. I can easily take off 6 albums, and if we're comparing it to like the rest of the catalog of Guns N' Roses, I'll take Chinese Democracy over Spaghetti Incident any day. 8 days, 8 days a week. You
Sure.
know, like I I do not give me that covers album shit.
Yeah.
You guys are the best band in the world apparently, or by what people say, and you're giving me a full covers album. Like what's going on? Come on, give me, and then disband basically. So it's I don't know. I knew that might be like fighting words to some people because I know one of my best buddies. He thinks Axl Rose is God, and he loves Spaghetti Incident, and we always argue about that. But it's weird. I just I enjoy it. I don't think it gets the respect it deserves. There is good stuff. If you listen to it without the title Guns N' Roses, I
Yeah.
think more people would like it. Like same with Motley Crue.
Right.
Same with a lot of those bands like that. So that I think that's well deserving to be on this list, and it certainly works for me.
It definitely changed the sound, and I should revisit it because I have shit on it numerous times in the past. And I do remember there being a couple songs where I was like, okay. Again, so I just mentioned a little bit ago that like I don't get into all that busy shit,
Yeah.
all the extra shit. I
Right.
don't want horns. So I went and saw Guns N' Roses last year.
Okay.
Um, and I went and saw Steven Adler's band 2 days, 3 days ago.
That's right.
And so I left the Guns N' Roses show with like two songs left because of parking out because there was like 15,000 people there. Um,
Really.
but it sounded okay, but it was so bloated. There's like 9 people on stage, a
Right.
congo player, backup singers, a couple keyboard players, this, that. And so I'm like, and then Steven Adler's band is fucking two guitars, bass, and drums.
Hmm.
And it was just like visiting 1987 GNR. Now, I know bands have to grow, but
Hmm.
you can grow and maintain a semblance of what got you where you are. And and I felt like on Chinese Democracy, now Axel started that shit in like 94. I
Right.
remember in like 97
Hmm.
hearing any anytime now. It's
Hmm.
coming anytime now. Every year it was like we're going to get this Chinese Democracy. He's perfecting it. It is going to be the greatest fucking album in the history of fucking albums. But when you constantly pick at something, sometimes you take away what maybe would have made it great, a little rough and raw right away. And you're like, no, I'm changing that, changing that. And I feel like he did that over so many years. It became a big bloated mess. So I should revisit it. I maybe shouldn't shit on it because I love Guns N' Roses. And I love Poison and LA Guns. I know I shit on their album.
Right. Yeah.
For an album, they were kind of worth shitting on, in my opinion. So Chinese Democracy, to me, it's a thumbs down. I should revisit it because maybe there's a couple songs that I kind of missed out on. But I hope GNR puts out a new album, and I hope that they give us some part of the past that we fell in love with Guns N'
Right.
Roses for.
I will totally agree with you. It is layered, like production wise,
Yeah.
it's thick. But if you can kind of get past that and like just still kind of like listen to Axl, he's still there. Like his voice is still there on that whole album, which
Yeah.
is crazy to think about. That some people would say he wasted his like somewhat his prime still on an album like this, but it's still good. It's like
Yeah.
he's still there. But what do you think about the newer singles that they released? Guns N' Roses. What do you think of them?
I mean, the Hard School was the closest to sounding like so, and because I think it's a holdover from way back. And now I'm
Probably.
trying to think of the. So I just talked about the
Absurd was absurd one.
Absurd, and then there's and I don't count Shadow of Your Love because Shadow of Your Love actually came out in '87
You're
over
right.
two.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
and
Yep.
there's one more and the one that I can't remember the name for, to me sounded like really like it would have fit on Use Your Illusions. It's heavy keyboard,
Okay.
similar to maybe Estranged on the Use Your Illusions. They're decent.
Hmm.
um I I don't listen to them and think holy shit. So maybe
Right.
maybe that's,
Okay.
I hope if they're writing it, because Axl owns everything. And
He
I
does.
would bet that Slash and Duff are I don't even know if they've gotten their full portions back or if Axl said, look, I'll pay you a shitload to be part of the band, you
Hmm.
know, but it's still Axl's gig, I think. So if they do write a new album, I hope that he brings Slash and Duff into the songwriting process. Somebody who I think never got enough credit for the original sound is Izzy Stradlin.
I agree.
Once Izzy
100%.
was gone, everything changed. Kind of like once Steve Clark was gone, I felt like Def Leppard just never quite got back to where they were.
Right.
Rhythm guitarists, even though they don't get the publicity for all the blistering solos, they're the ones who come up with maybe those simple riffs that are iconic and unforgettable. So,
Hmm.
anyway,
Yeah. Just like AC/DC, Rhino Bucket, and all them, like the
yes,
rhythm is pretty important to those
Brittany
bands.
Fox.
Hmm.
Hello, Michael Kelly Smith. So, Michael Kelly Smith, give me one of those fucking Brittany Fox coffee mugs. So,
Yeah, plenty to choose from. You want to bite down hard, boys and heat, anything. He has all kinds of shit, man.
no shit. I got to get a hold of him. All right. My number three. And so I'm going to shit on another album from a band I like, a band I really like. And it's Dokken. And, Dokken was always just under the cusp of becoming headlining superstars. Their albums always generally went platinum,
Hmm.
but they usually never went double platinum. You know,
Right.
they could headline smaller venues, but they were never going to headline 20,000 seaters. So, you get to a point where they're on the Monsters of Rock tour, but that's also kind of where the band's going to end. They break up. Don Dokken puts out a pretty decent solo album, Up from the Ashes. George Lynch goes on and does Lynch Mob. They
Hmm.
reunite in 95 for a pretty decent album, Dysfunctional, that actually had a hit, a
Yeah.
semi hit with Too High to Fly.
Yeah.
Good song. But in 97, holy fuck, they put out Shadow Life, and Don has said has said it was a George Lynch album. He wouldn't even let them use the Dokken original logo. It is Dokken's stab at grunge. And there, I will talk later on. There are some bands who took on grunge and it worked. There are some bands who took on grunge and it didn't. And that's the case with, I can't name a song, you know,
Yeah.
because I have in the recent past put it on YouTube, and just like American hardcore, I get 2 songs in and I'm like, fuck, you know, and I loved your line about there might be gold at the end of the album, but I can never get there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the same thing with Shadow Life. I do not actually own a copy of this. I mean, obviously it's out of print and it probably will never be reissued either. I guess rightfully so. But like, since I never was able to like actually find it and own it, I never really listened to it. But if it's anything what literally everyone is talking about, there isn't even like one guy out there that I know that is like, damn, you need to buy this. So, yeah, I'm with you. I kind of don't have much of an opinion because I never fully listened to it, but God, yeah, it might be like a walk through hell. I don't know if I want to do it or not.
And you know, Dokken has still been releasing albums, and you can
Oh
tell that
yeah,
they're like, okay, that fucking experimentation or trying to fit in isn't working, so they've gone
right.
back to their classic sound. And hey, you know, bands have to grow, but I also salute bands that go, you know what, we loved this music in the past, our fans love it. There is nothing wrong with going, hey, we're gonna give them more of the same. I don't blame bands for doing that.
Oh,
And
of course not.
and I, you know, I love it
Yeah,
when bands are like, hey, here's this is kind of reminiscent to what we were famous for.
yeah, and if anything, that makes your fans even love you that much more
Yeah,
and that
yes.
much more diehard. Yeah, but I'm with you though. I will say the new Dokken album, Heaven Comes Down, I think is what it's called. I was actually impressed with that. I don't know
Yeah.
if my standards were set real low for that. Like I set the bar real low for that, but it exceeded my expectations. It was pretty good.
I've listened to it a little bit and I've liked what I heard. I haven't given it enough of a chance to give it an
Hmm.
honest. And I will say, and I'll feel bad about this because hey, bands got to tour and
Hmm.
provide for their families. But I've seen Doc in a couple times in recent years, and Don's voice is rough. And I
Yeah.
don't like to say, fuck, you gotta quit. Because
Right.
look, I coach basketball and I train little kids and I coach high school. And if somebody told me, like, hey, you know what? You suck at coaching now. You got to quit. Like, hey, I have a house to pay for. I have a kid.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so you know, I don't like that. Just quit. You know,
And
like,
if people are still coming out to see you,
right, right,
that's another thing. I mean, you don't people aren't forced to go there because like
right.
yeah, I'll set a little example for like my example. I never seen Dokken live. I went and saw Dokken live 2 years ago, and sure, yes, he didn't sound good, but I still had a shit ton of fun.
Yes,
And now I can say I at least seen Dokken and George
yes,
Lynch on the same stage live.
yeah,
So, but will I go see him again? Probably not. But
right.
I can say I've
And
seen him once.
and I'm a free market guy, so if people stop going, then hey, Don's probably gonna, you know. But if people are still
Right.
willing to go, you know, and
100%.
in the age of YouTube and the internet, you have all the opportunity in the world to check it out before you spend your hard-earned money. So
Hmm.
if you, hey, go ahead, because the music's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Vocally, he's not great, but the music, the band is still gonna sound great, and you know you're gonna relive a little bit of your youth. But okay,
Yep.
with
Nothing
that,
wrong with that.
so Dokken, that's a no. Let's go on to
Yeah.
your number two. What do
I'm
you?
with you too. That's a no as well.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right, my number two. Let's us go with. Let us go with this one. I'm going to change pace here a little bit. All right, I'm going to go with 1995's Roxx Gang, The Voodoo You Love.
yeah,
Now, everyone, well, for people that do know Roxx Gang, this is technically their second album out. Now, the first album from 1988 is The Things You Never Done Before,
yeah.
which I absolutely think rivals Appetite for Destruction as
Oh,
far as who the first actual sleaze band is. It only came out like 6 months after, technically after Appetite by the date. But man, like I always throw that out there because like actually, if believe it or not, Robbie Strine, the bass player, the original bass player for Roxx Gang, lives like down the street from me,
Really?
and like he tells me like all these stories and stuff like that, and he's a cool dude. And uh so, but as we all know, they only had one actual album as an original band, and then they broke up for years and years, and Revolving Door. So Stacey Blades actually plays on this album. So from what Robbie told me that a lot of at least half of these songs were written already from the original band after the first album, and then they broke up. So you get some of the that's why some of these songs on here kind of sound slightly different than the other ones, but as a whole, it sounds totally different from a good different though. It's still rock, it's still metal. It has a little bit more of there are some horns on it. It
Yeah.
has that more upbeat, faster, southern feel to it. I don't even know where I want to like maybe like a harder Choir Boys, maybe London
Sure.
Choir Boys, if you will, or an
Sure.
American version.
Yep.
But yeah, like Stone Dead Drunk Again's fun as hell. Now I will say there's three absolutely great songs that's just worth the purchase of this album alone, and that is Time Bomb. Oh my god, that riff, that tone, and just that song in general. If Rob Zombie would have released that in 1995, that would have been a hit. That would
Right.
have absolutely been a hit, no doubt about it. And but then you also have another song on here, Hot Lana, which is like totally 80s too. Like now does this sound like 1995? Other than Time Bomb, no. Like Time Bomb is probably like the most 90s sounding song, but
Right.
that just song just totally rips and kicks ass. Great solo, and then you got a great ballad though too. Here, Kevin writes a great ballad, and that is Silver Train.
Yes.
The production on that song isn't very good, but I think it actually works better that way
Yep.
because it actually sounds like you're in a train station somewhat, and talking about trains and shit like that. But but anyway, like this album, man, it's just great. There for a little while when I first found this band, like when I was a teenager, young, I bought these. I think I bought both these albums at the same time, the debut and this one.
Yep.
And there for a couple years, I like this one better than Things You Never Done Before. But now that has switched because of like the greatness of Things You Never Done Before.
Yeah.
But and because I think it's probably the best sleaze metal album, or
Yeah.
started it anyway. But yeah, Roxx Gang, man, I'm a big fan of it. I mean, I even like the artwork on here.
Yeah.
Like it's just the wrong time. A band that has a revolving door. Everyone always fought in this band. It's a shame because they were great. I think they did have great things ahead of them if they would have stayed together. But and because even the debut album was produced by Bill Hill, and like everyone knows Bill Hill as a producer. He produced all the big bands in the '80s, and
Yep.
theirs just kind of got swept under the rug. Now, like I said, it is because of like infighting and just promotion and shit like that. But man, it just one of those bands that just kind of like Kicks just did not get the break, and just greatness everywhere you look on the album, and it sucks. It breaks my heart, and then especially when Robbie tells me stories and stuff like that, it's like God,
Yeah.
it wasn't all fun and party back in the '80s. Sad to
Right.
say for the guys, anyway. But yeah, I don't know. Do you? Because this was all Paris Records. I guess
Yep.
they did release it as a new album and such like that, like as an actual band. And do you remember when this came out?
Well, I think it came out in 95.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and Things You've Never Done Before came out in 88. And I
Yes.
worship that album.
Oh
I
yeah.
love it. Kevin Steele has such an original, he wasn't
Yeah.
going for that high pitched Axl. He was doing dark and deep shit, like almost like he could have been a singer for the Doors. Um,
Right.
and man, I think there's at least 4 songs on the debut that should have been hits. Red
Yeah.
Rose, Ball and Chain, No Easy Way Out, Scratch My Back, Shut Your Mouth. Those songs are amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I have that album. In fact, I bought from Paris a box of rocks. It's called. It's like a little
Okay.
Roxx Gang 3 CD. Now I can't remember what's in it all, but so I have that album. It is definitely not as good as the debut, but it
Mhm.
is very solid.
Oh
And
yeah.
it is a change, but it works just because fucking Kevin Steele sings on it. And like Stone Dead Drunk Again, is that what it's called? I can't
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
the exact
That's
title.
fun. Yeah, that's a fun song.
That's a kick-ass song. Like you said,
And
a great ballad on there. So
yeah, I think the actual single or like music video that they had for this was Hot for Love, was the music video. And that's another point that you brought up too that I forgot about. If you would just play the albums side by side, these two albums, the debut and the second
right,
one here, they sound nothing really musically alike other than Kevin's voice. That's the only
right,
way that you know it's still Roxx Gang. So
exactly.
so I think with that being said, I think that kind of fits on this list because this is probably like the most cheat one that I did, like that where oh come on man, still hair metal sounding, but
Correct.
like from the debut though, it is different, like some people don't like that style, like
Yeah,
choir boy style and southern style stuff. So I thought it was a big enough change to warrant a spot here.
sure, sure. All right, we are on to my number two. And I mean, here's a band that for most of their career were leaders when it came to style, when it came to music. Most people would acknowledge that they were the beginning of hair metal, talking about Motley Crue. I mean, shit.
Mhm.
Even a couple months ago, I was like, I can't believe Too Fast for Love came out in 81. I always thought like I grew up thinking it came out in like 83, like at the same time as like Quiet Riot's Metal Health, right
Yeah.
around the same time as Rats Out of the Cellar. Fuck, it
Mhm.
came out years before that. So
It
they were
did.
so ahead of their time. And then, they get to Theater of Pain and their images change to glam, and then that kind of inspires bands like Poison and shit like that to come out with a glam look. In
Mhm.
87, they do Girls, Girls, Girls. Now they're looking tough and wearing leather and looking like bikers. That, surprise, surprise, here comes Guns N' Roses a few months later and kind of has that look. So they were always leaders. Well,
Mhm.
in 92, Vince is fired or kicked out, depending on who you believe. And Vince goes on and does what I think was a great solo album in 93 with Exposed. But Motley drastically changes their sound when they release their self-titled album in 94 with John Corabi from The Scream. By the way, I fucking love The Scream. Um, but you can't deny that the Crew 94 album is at least influenced in part by grunge, and maybe some of it is much heavier than grunge, so you get a little
Mhm.
bit of grunge, you get maybe a little bit of hard rock, some almost Pantera-esque elements with some of the riffs. So anyway, maybe that's not the most perfect description, but definitely darker and
Mhm.
and deeper than you were getting on
Yeah.
Dr. Feelgood and all those albums. So it it bombed. I mean, it went gold, but Dr. Feelgood had gone 6 times platinum. And I'll admit, when I first got this, the change was so drastic that I listened to it once or twice and I put it away. And I was like, that sucks. Now, I did the same thing with Generation Swine, except Generation Swine actually did suck. Um, but a couple years later, I have a shit ton of CDs, and this is before streaming and all that. So, you
Mhm.
get bored, you walk around your CD collection, you're like, fuck, what am I going to listen to? I decide to pull out the Motley Crue 94 album again and put it in. And that time I remember, like, wait a minute, that's a good fucking song. That's a good fucking song. And lo and behold, I just fell in love with that album. Um, Uncle Jack, Hooligan's Holiday, Misunderstood. Maybe the catchiest rock song on the album is Poison Apples. Then you get like Drift Away, and did I say Misunderstood? Anyway,
Yeah.
those kind of ballad-esque songs that are just ultra catchy. I love John Corabi's voice. Tommy Lee is face it, a great fucking rock drummer.
Mhm.
So I started off hating the 94 album because of the change, but now I say it works, and it works fucking really well.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's one I was actually shocked when we first shared our list that you didn't have this on here because I know you do love this album, and I do too.
Yep.
This is another one that's one of my favorite Motley Crue albums.
Yep.
And now I guess because I look at it back in retrospective because of my age, like I wasn't buying or looking at music when I was 3 years old. So I never hated it. I never hated it. I'll say that, like, because I was always like, oh, Smoke the Sky. That's interesting. Or the other single, Power to the Music, or and shit like
Hooligans
that.
on it.
But
Yeah.
and so but I will say though now, after years with it now, I will say that Hammered and Till Death Do Us Part, I fucking love those songs. Like
Yeah.
when someone talks about this album, I'm like, okay, I gotta go listen to those two albums right now because they're just absolutely great. The riffs are great.
Yep.
Like John just sounds real good on the whole album.
Yep.
And because like John does sing as like a part in Generation Swine, Let Us Pray, the song Let Us
Okay.
Pray. He
Okay.
sings the backing vocals
Yeah.
to that song. And
Okay.
I'm like, holy shit, let me go check out this song. Well, that might be one of the best songs on Generation Swine. So just based on that alone. But no, I really enjoy this album. Like this is Motley Crue. Okay, you had the extreme of like real shitty stuff that they done somewhat recently, or Girls, 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 and then you have the great stuff of that everyone likes, that's sold real well and everything like that. But right in the middle is where the masterpiece is, and that is 1994. In my view,
Yeah.
and like I'm the glam guy, I'm a hair metal guy. Like
Oh yeah.
fuck all that 90s stuff, compared
Yep.
to hair metal. But man, something about that album is just
Yes.
absolutely great. And
Yes.
I'll defend that. I'll die on this hill for that album.
You said it before, like, and I can't remember what album you were talking about, but you can't go into it. You have to go into it not thinking it's Motley Crue, Vince Neil, Dr. Feelgood. If you
Yeah.
go into it, fucking balloons, like it's a new band, then you're
Of
able to
course. Yeah.
separate yourself from the past, which isn't always easy to do. But if you can do that, the 94 album is pretty fucking stellar.
Yeah. And I think that is what most people's hang up is. The first answer is always, oh, Vince ain't on it.
Yeah.
That's usually, in my experience, the first answer that I always hear or see, and that's a damn shame because you're missing out on one of the greatest albums of the mid 90s, I would say, not early 90s, because we're big fans. We
Yep.
know, me and you know how much greatness was in 90, 91, 92.
Yep.
And but yeah, of the mid stuff, like of the mid 90s, oh my god, one of the best that there ever was. That Charlie?
Ridley, because Charlie is
Oh,
out with her puppies
ah,
farm because she had her puppies, and
right, yeah.
I don't know. So the family that gave me Charlie, Charlie's going to be gone for like 8 weeks while her puppies are good. They're like, "Well, do you want to take Ridley home? Because you might be lonely." And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'll take Ridley home."
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, you're very
Is
great.
he adjusting to it?
Yeah. At first, it was like the first day I brought her home. She puked in the truck, and then then she shit in the house. And like the family, they're like, she never does that. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure,
Yeah.
going to a new place. Okay. We are on to the final choices. Crash course. What's your number one?
All right. So this one might be an interesting one for people. We're gonna go way into the light here, and that is going to be Stryper's Reborn. And this one here, this came out in the early 2000s. This was technically the first reunion album
Yeah.
for Stryper, and it was supposed to be a Michael Sweet solo album once again, which he does have a good string of solo albums. But when they did a couple reunion shows, they were like, "Hey, let's just get back together and do an album." And this is what came of it. And I gotta say, man, like I'm in the camp of modern Stryper is better than original era Stryper.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think their new stuff musically. Even Michael Sweet sounds just as good, if not better. Sings a lot of different deliveries, vocal deliveries and stuff. And they even do like a speed metal type song on like one of their newer albums, and it sounds amazing. So, but with Reborn here, you do get a very Stryper is always kind of serious, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
but uh you could tell they meant business with this album. They were like, all right, yeah, we're not who you think we were back in the 80s. Not that they got away from their sound per se, because like this is more of a metal sound than say certainly than say In God We Trust. That was just production hell, for glossy production hell.
Yeah.
But certainly, with Reborn, you get a little bit of a contemporary rock sound or contemporary metal sound to it. Uh, Not necessarily new metal, but people do say there's some new metal traces in here, which I can see some of that. But yeah, it's just a little different. They never do anything really like this again.
Mhm.
But really good though. It did actually chart on a couple like Billboard charts and stuff like that. So it did have a little bit of success, which Stryper always does in certain circles. But
Sure.
hey, I gotta say though, a lot of these songs on here, man, like I will say are certainly some of my favorites. You got Reborn, really good, heavy, and then you got like, If I Die, Wait for You. Just there's some good ballads on here too. Very good. I a lot of people talk shit on Stryper, but my God, they are musically gifted. Sure, they can be somewhat preachy sometimes and stuff like that. Okay, that's cool. Well, so is Slayer, so is Megadeth, so is all these bands, to an extent.
Yeah.
And so what?
Right.
That's another discussion for another time. But yeah, the Reborn, man, I'm a fan of it. The whole band sounds good. Michael sounds good. Now, because they come out to say basically, we're going to be here for the next 25 years kicking everyone's ass, especially from the 80s, like their contemporaries, their peers. And, you know, we're going to sound nothing like, and we're going to sound harder. I don't want to say they sound nothing like Stryper because they still do. They still sound like Michael Sweet still sounds like Michael Sweet, but you're not going to get In God We Trust off,
Right.
even To Hell with the Devil. You're not really going to get anything like that
Right.
off these new albums. But my God, like the new albums are so good. I cannot recommend them enough. Like if someone asked me who is the best 80s band that sounds just as good or better today, the first one that always comes to my mind is Stryper. And
Yep.
and Stryper isn't my favorite band. Like they're not even probably a top 10 band for me in general. And but
Right.
like they're the ones that are like they're great. Like they are so good. They're still so good. And every time they come out with a new album, every couple of years now, it's like, all right, I'm there. Yeah, I know you're going to be giving me quality stuff. So it's not going to be a cash grab like some bands do that we
Right.
see today. And wait, so and that's I thought just this one, especially this sound doesn't really get talked about too much. So I thought what, have people check it out. Expect something slightly different, a little bit contemporary, if you will.
Right.
But no, yeah, very good stuff. Very good. I certainly recommend it for anyone that likes Stryper.
What if so I haven't listened to that album. I like some early Stryper, but but I was never a huge fan. And it has
Mhm.
nothing to do with I salute them that they don't hide their Christianity. Hey, if you want to be a Christian man, go out and be the best damn Christian band ever. So it's if I say I don't like Stryper, it has nothing to do with that. Absolutely. But on that album, when you
Mhm.
said more modern, if I maybe I heard a song or something, or maybe it was just people talking about it. Are the guitars a little bit more like down tuned? So it's
Yeah,
almost a little sludgier guitar,
on some
heavier.
songs,
Yeah,
not
okay.
every song. Like it's
Yep,
not overly, yeah, it's not overly done.
yep,
Like I said, there's influences of that stuff of like what was
yep,
popular at the time. And when I say at the time, like 2004, 2005 is when
yep,
this came out.
yep,
So like around, early 2000s metal. And it just, but I think it works, man. I think they
yeah.
did great
Sure.
job on it. Like
Yep,
it's really good. But yeah, like you said, or like you asked, it is not on every song, but
right.
some of the songs that they do, like kind of like beat that drum of like contemporary, newer metal stuff.
Yep.
Uh, it works. It totally works. I think those are some even the strongest tracks
Sure.
on the album. So, but yeah, it's one that no one even really talks about much, even for Stryper fans. And I'm like, damn, there. Like I said, there's like 4 or 5 songs on here that I go to. I actually visit this album probably even more than The Hell with the Devil now,
Okay.
and which everyone that's a staple. Which it's
Yeah.
still a great album, To Hell with the
Yeah.
Devil. Like it was just so played out when I was younger and stuff like that.
Sure.
So like I think Reborn I visit even more than that now. So
I think I've heard some similar things, and I know I feel bad because I haven't visited with many of the newer Europe releases, but I think Europe has had some albums that people would describe similarly, more modern sound, a little more
mhm,
down-tuned guitar riffing. But also a lot of people talk highly of those albums, like there are some people that talk highly, just like you do, of
right.
Stryper's Reborn.
Yeah, and another point too, even though they do like down tune on some stuff, they do have that new metal sound. They don't shy away from the guitar
Right.
either, which that's my biggest issue with anything after like 95 with metal in general and even up until somewhat recently. Like no solos, no great guitar. There's no guitar heroes in that span of time for metal.
Right.
And but there is still like solos, there's still Oz is still a guitar player here on this
Yep.
album, even though it is down tuned a little bit and like has some of that new metal sound.
Right. Okay. All right. Now I'm that's I'm gonna listen to that tonight because now you got my
Good,
interest.
gotcha interested.
And
Good. That's all I had.
I follow Michael Sweet on online, and I like sometimes he'll talk about like the old days and the current stuff. So he shares a lot of interesting tales. So
Oh
all right.
yeah.
Okay. We're on to my number one, and here's and shoot, I was just telling you during a break that I get to sometimes I feel like I don't want to keep harping on the same shit. I don't want fans of the show to be like, okay, here we go, fucking Lillian X again. Here we go. But if you're gonna talk about hair metal bands that change their sound, I have to include Warrant
hmm
because Warrant did drastically change their sound on Ultraphobic. And shit, I could have put Dog Eat Dog because that was definitely a darker album. And I love
Right.
Dog Eat Dog, but Ultraphobic definitely, I don't think you can argue that it is Warrant trying to do grunge. But I said earlier that there are some bands that it works for, and like it didn't work for Shadow Life. And
hmm
and I do understand why some people might think it didn't work for Warrant. But I've had numerous Warrant videos. Um, in 95, when that album came out, I was probably really starting my drinking problem.
hmm
And and when Belly to Belly came out, that's when that's when I dropped out of college and shit really started going bad. So the older I get, and when I first listened to that, I was like, what the fuck did you do? But the older I get, the more I gravitate to that album because when I look at those songs and you look at what happened with Janie Lane's life,
hmm
dying of alcohol poisoning and his drinking problem ruined his career and probably ruined his life. And so I relate. Like I look at those songs and those dark songs, Undertow. Um, shit, now I don't have the song listing right up by me. Ultraphobic.
hmm
Um,
Crawl
well,
space.
Crawl Space.
Yeah.
Shit. Yes. Um, so I look at those song titles and they mean something to me. And
Right.
even if it is Warrant going grunge, you can't deny that Janie Lane can craft a well-written song that has melodies fucking galore. And I love that album. And so, yes, the songs I listed, Chameleon is
Yeah.
man, man, that should have been a hit. And shit, I have Stronger Now tattooed up
Yeah.
here. And there's so and a lot of people talk about Stronger Now. There's a ballad on that album called High,
hmm
what is amazing. It's one of my favorite Warrant ballads, right up there with I Saw Red. And so that song doesn't get enough credit. So anyway, I love that album. I and I relate to the darkness of it. And I wish that so Ryan, who does a lot of episodes, he does a
Hmm.
weekly episode with me, and he's always been kind of like Warrant ended for me and Dog Eat Dog, but we were just talking about that album, and he's like, you know what? I got to go give it another listen. He
Hmm.
texted me today, and he's like, "Fuck, man." He's like, "You're right. That album is solid. It is something that you're. It's a grower. You're not going to listen to it the first time and be like, yes."
Yeah, yeah.
There is no party rock on that thing at all, but go into it with an open mind, and you'll find some catchy, solid, though grunge influenced rock.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I remember when I bought this probably like 10 years ago. The only two songs I really thought were memorable or had on the iPod for most of the time I had this was Stronger Now and Chameleon. Those were the two strongest I thought at the time. But like you said, like I did listen to High when you recommended it on one of your previous episodes. Not bad. Just one that got kind of got overlooked. But yeah, like you said, like it's the only issue with me for this album though,
Hmm?
like just looking at it as the album, is Janie Lane's still in his prime. I think he was always in his prime, even up until his death, and songwriting wise and stuff. And
Yep.
it just kind of sucks that they couldn't just produce something a little bit better up and even with Belly to Belly, like even up
Yeah.
until they did disband totally. Like I feel like it's just kind of wasted his vocals, but we just wasted like
Yeah.
you said, it's still a good, decent album to listen to, but from the greatness that we got the previous three albums, it's
Yeah.
like, man, yeah, there's good stuff, but like I can only listen to it like in a certain headspace or something like that. It's not as easily digestible.
See, like, so I can listen to Ultraphobic. For me, Belly to Belly, I get that way. For me, Belly to Belly has maybe four songs that I genuinely really enjoy,
Hmm.
but there is a ton of stuff on there that I'm like, oh, it's hard to listen to, you know,
Right.
so dark. Man, I mean, I've said before, uh, sometimes I listen to Belly to Belly, and I'm like, there's a guy who's thinking about committing suicide.
Oh
Some of the
yeah.
songs are so dark.
Yeah.
And I don't say that with no like I mean it breaks my heart because that guy was so talented, but
Hmm.
so that album is a hard listen. Ultraphobic I can put on. In fact, when I revisit Warrant, I very rarely listen to Dirty Rotten Filthy Stinking Rich or Cherry Pie. I go to
Hmm.
Dog Eat Dog and I go to Ultraphobic. And part of that is because I love those first two so much. They got played to shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you weren't hearing Dog Eat Dog or Ultraphobic on the radio, so you only heard that shit when you chose to play it, you know.
Right. Yeah. It's still fresh to you somewhat.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. I,
So
I agree.
Ultraphobic is a thumbs up for me. And are
Yeah,
you saying it's a
I'm
thumbs
in
up?
middle ground with that because
Sure.
I'm not gonna say it's bad because I still would recommend it to people, but
Yep.
just give them like the little asterisk, like be in the right headspace for it.
Yeah.
Because it's not like anything like the first three.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I'm in the middle with that one. I don't want to give it. It's not one I visit that much, but it's not one I shit on either. So.
Okay. So we have talked about the fact that we probably need to do a part two. So do you want to do any honorable mentions, or do you just want to hold off and until we do a part two?
The only thing I will give away for a part two
Sure.
is there will be a couple of industrial sound and stuff,
Yeah.
and there's a couple a couple of the bands will do have gun in their name. So,
Yeah.
and we did already do one gun technically, I guess, tonight, Guns N' Roses, but that's not what I'm talking about. There's a couple others that have gun in their name that are going to be on my part
Sure.
two list.
Sure. Sure.
So.
So I'm not going to go into because I have some, man, I have some great ones, and it took me forever to narrow this down to five. So I'm going to hold off. We'll eventually do a part two. But while you're waiting for part two, hey, what are the albums that we missed? Who are the bands or the albums that changed their sound, whether it went grunge or industrial, whatever it was,
Mhm.
and feel free to say whether or not you thought it worked. I love hearing those comments, and I love getting recommendations. And I do try to respond to everything. And when people say you need to check this album out, legitimately, I take that to heart and I try to listen to the shit that people recommend.
Oh
So,
yeah.
Trevor, thanks a lot for being on the show, man. It's the first time. Hopefully, I have many more to come.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, my man. Thank you for having me on. And like I said, it's always fun talking about this stuff because sometimes when I was growing up, I was the only one talking to people like this, other than like my dad and maybe like one or two friends. But like, it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool. But people knew the songs one way or another, whether it was band T-shirts or just me in their face with it. So
Yep.
all good. But thank you, my man, for having me on.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Hey, so he's younger. He was born in the 90s, but I love that there is a newer generation and you are leading the newer generation of people who love this music. And I've always, hey, in my opinion, it's the greatest generation, the 80s, early 90s hard rock. So I get other
Mhm.
people, but thank you for doing all that you do for this type of music, man.
Yeah,
Hey,
you're welcome, man. You're
yeah.
welcome. And
Uh,
that's why I do it, just to keep it alive, just for
yep,
the future generations too.
totally.
That's what my channel is all about as well as yours.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, thank you for being here. Go check out the Crash Course Metal Show. Hey, check it. Look us up on X at Hair Metal Guru. Look up Crash Course something. You'll find his
Yeah.
shit as well.
Yeah, you'll find it with K's. With K's, you'll find it.
With K's. Hey, subscribe, like, comment, whatever you do. I just appreciate you being here. Until the next episode comes out. My name is Anthony. They call me the Guru. Take care.